He is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does.
He's got so much potential.
But he comes back from every fight that he's had better, you know? I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days though.
Change, another inconsistency in Anthony Joshua. I now understand, I believe having watched this, where Jake Paul is getting his confidence from. How he's built this narrative in his head that he genuinely has a chance. I think the thing to remember here though, is that Anthony Joshua doesn't struggle against all smaller fighters.
This might be his last fight, getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out.
Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson talked about the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight and pointed out the clear differences between them. Tyson said Joshua needs to control his punches because Jake is not on his level. Rogan called Joshua one of the most dangerous fighters in boxing and warned that Paul is taking a big risk by fighting someone so strong, especially since Jake has mostly faced retired or old.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you could see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the
host of the Wade. Concept said that for Jake Paul, getting knocked out by one clean punch from Anthony Joshua would actually be safer than taking many punches over 8 rounds. The reason is simple. Repeated hits can cause serious long-term damage. Even though Joshua will wear smaller 10-ounce gloves, a fast knockout gives Paul a clear ending and limits ongoing harm. The host said this changes how people should look at the fight, showing how dangerous it is for Paul even with exhibition-style rules. Joshua has been told to use 10-ounce gloves to balance the fight and make it more exciting for fans and media. Still, the danger remains high. Joshua's power is well known, and less padding increases knockout chances. The gloves do not change the big gap in strength, skill, and experience.
There really is only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, you know, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here outside of, again, the bodily harm. You know, you fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but as far as your marketability, as long...
Kisa Badarian explained why Anthony Joshua was picked as Jake Paul's opponent. Because the fight is being filmed for Netflix, the organizers needed a matchup that looked big and told a strong story. They looked at fame, media value, and fan interest. Joshua fit all of that. He is a former world champion with worldwide recognition, making the fight easy to sell. His involvement raises the stakes and creates a strong storyline for fans and sponsors. Netflix coverage adds even more drama to the build.
You know, Jake Paul being Jake Paul, he wanted to focus on the biggest, baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, I don't know, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I will say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight, some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well, Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia is interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said he's a DAZN fighter. This ain't happening. And of course, we know there's no bigger.
Ryan Garcia spoke about how losing to Anthony Joshua could change Jake Paul's life. He said Joshua's power should never be underestimated, and that a loss could affect Paul physically, mentally, and professionally. The fight could change how fans see Paul and where his career goes. Garcia stressed that Joshua's strength and skill make this a serious challenge, and the consequences of losing are real. Strong preparation, focus, and awareness are needed for.
I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look it, he loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Nagano. It's like, but then again, if he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out.
Frank. Martin said that even though the fight pays very well, it is still extremely dangerous for Jake Paul. Money does not remove the risk, and Paul should have thought carefully before accepting the fight. Martin explained that this is not just about money. The danger is real, and the challenge is huge. Paul is facing a strong and experienced boxer whose background cannot be matched by fame or promotion. While the money is attractive,
Jake now, I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time. He gotten better throughout all his fights. He done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for their whole life, it's a little different. If that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight. But that's a tough task for, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. I know AJ personally, so that's
Johnny Nelson said this fight could end Jake Paul's boxing career if he gets knocked out. Paul has become a big money draw for fighters like Joshua by offering large paydays. Nelson said some conspiracy theories suggest Paul may not be able to take part in future big fights after this one because of possible damage in public opinion. This fight is very important for Paul's future, as it offers big money, but also serious personal risk.
AJ, I'm stuck in between, because nobody on this green earth would actually turn down 50, 60 million. to fight Jake Paul. And people that don't like this will probably watch it because they want to see Jake Paul getting knocked out. So what's it say about AJ and what's it say about Jake Paul? I think I was thinking upside down. For AJ, I thought, Mama's cashing out. He's cashing out because he's going down this mimic line. But I thought, in reality, is he? Realistically, he's thinking, you know what? This big mouth YouTuber stroke boxer has the cheek to call me out. I'd be pissed off at that, if I'm honest with you. I'd be upset if I was AJ, thinking, that's disrespect, man. You think you can deal with me? But he didn't. AJ was jovial and he commended Jake Paul's business acumen, saying, we've sat down, the deal's been done. But still, it just leaves an odd taste in your mouth. So as long as AJ gets the job done, and I mean gets the job done, shows his world-class pedigree, and wipes this boy out, then everybody's happy. But how does it enhance his career? The only way it enhances his career is financially. That's it. No other way. There's no props from beating Jake Paul, apart from saying, thank God you shut him up. For Jake Paul now, I got to give this boy props because he now has our attention and the whole world is talking about Jake Paul. I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors, Bet Goodwin, for supporting That Boxing Show. Now, if you're interested in having a little flutter, or as I call it after my dad, Benji's Bets, Bet Goodwin's the place to be. Check out Bet Goodwin using the QR code on the screen. I'm probably all right. I'm probably 90% thinking the fight's going to happen. But I'm struggling. I'm thinking, this boy can't be so stupid. But then you hear a whisper. You hear a whisper that Jake Paul himself might be cashing out. Because the big purses that he's pulling, fighting these has-beens or ex-fighters, they're dropping slowly but surely. So maybe, just maybe, this might be his last fight. Getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out. But there's always that conspiracy theory. Are there some contract agreements that can and cannot be done, which will never see the light of day that we don't know about? Well, if you're an ex-fighter and if you like the fight game, you'll see fake. You'll know fake when you see it. So if there's any of that fakery going on with this, pulling a shot, taking it easy, giving man a bit of a breather, especially coming from AJ, I'd be disappointed because AJ's brand alone.
Anthony Joshua spoke about Francis Ngannou's decision not to fight Jake Paul, calling it a poor choice. Joshua said fighters do not often get opportunities like this, and turning down big money fights is not always smart. Chael Sonnen agreed, saying Ngannou should have taken the fight. There was little risk and a strong chance to make money and gain attention. Joshua's comments showed the importance of smart choices.
Ngannou does not take the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua takes the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua at the press conference gets asked his opinion of Francis not taking the fight against Jake Paul. And Joshua's like, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. There is no reason for him to not take this match. I cannot be and am not mad at Francis. I can't be. Like rules would preclude me from being upset with Francis. I'm not a big Francis fan. Francis fan. I'm not a Francis supporter. So I want to hurt Francis. I want to do something to hurt him. Well, his own actions took $10 million out of his bank account, of which, by the way, could use $10 million. So I can't be mad at him. If I teased him, and by God, get in there and he go, oh my gosh, I heard Chael and I heard from all the Eagles and what was I thinking? And Joshua's out and this is my chance of redemption. Hey, put me in, Jake. That would then help him. That would be positive for Francis. That would create envy as well as jealousy from outside observers like me. But I will tell you, trying to break down and understand how we got to this conclusion is mind-boggling. You ever met a writer? Your whole life, have you ever met a writer? Maybe went to college for it and they're a writer. Do you want to know the hardest thing in the world that person's going to have to do to make money? Find somebody to...
Jake Paul has mentioned Anthony Joshua's struggles against smaller fighters, saying it could help him in the fight. Analysts, including a podcast host named Henry, reviewed Joshua's past fights against smaller opponents and noticed certain trends. While Paul sees a weakness, The analysis shows Joshua's power, technique, and reach usually make up for size differences. This discussion reflects the wider debate about size in boxing.
Anthony Joshua definitely doesn't struggle, and that's against guys who are of a similar stature to him. When he won his first world title against Charles Martin, he was a taller heavyweight. Not taller than AJ necessarily, but a heavyweight of taller stature, and he got that one with a very simple knockout. It was one of the easiest fights of Anthony Joshua's career. He had a war against Vladimir Klitschko, but again, he was highly competitive and eventually managed to get Klitschko out of there. In the Kubrat Pulev fight, while it was a mixed performance, he did end up producing one of his best knockouts. Similarly against Robert Helenius, whilst AJ probably didn't put in one of his best performances, again, it ended in another dramatic knockout. He was punch perfect against Otto Wallin, in my opinion, and he had that absolutely devastating knockout win against Francis Ngannou, who, of course, an absolutely enormous man with a fantastic chin, or so it seemed until Anthony Joshua got his hands on him. Even earlier on in his career against the likes of White, Brazil, and Molina, these were all taller heavyweights who AJ dealt with consummate ease. Of course, most recently, he had that loss against Daniel Dubois. So the reason I mention all of these is to say that AJ doesn't struggle against every shorter man. Therefore, if Jake does okay in some capacity, as I say, loses on points or manages to go several rounds of Anthony Joshua, then you have to say that Jake Paul's quite a bit better than we thought. And Anthony Joshua, yeah, he's slipped since then a bit. I mean, AJ physically was better back then, but he's way more experienced now, so he's maybe around the same overall. It probably all evens out. But the point is, you'd have to give Jake Paul some credit in that situation and really worry about where Anthony Joshua is at this point. Overall, while some of the things that Jake Paul's saying might be true, it still doesn't mean that he has any hope in hell of winning this fight. I still fully expect Anthony Joshua to deal with him within a couple of rounds. Now look, to most people, it'll be a loss to Anthony Joshua if he doesn't even finish him in round one. But the reality is, I understand in boxing that someone can move and can survive for periods of time. It might be that Jake Paul runs. If he does that, then yeah, I could see how he could...
This fight has drawn huge attention, because it is seen as one of the biggest mismatches in recent boxing history. While Jake Paul has youth on his side, that alone cannot close the gap in skill, experience, and ring intelligence. Many believe the fight will be entertaining, but strongly favors Joshua in power, training, and technique. Paul has built his boxing career through social media fame, exhibitions, and carefully chosen fights. Facing Joshua is another step in that path, offering money and exposure. Analysts say chances like this are rare. While Paul brings hype and personality, he is facing a far more skilled and experienced boxer. This fight tests whether Paul is...
Why the fuck would he do this? And the only rational idea I can think of for why he's taking this fight is the fact that, from what I could find, it seems he's getting paid around $92 million by Netflix for this fight. And I'm sure all of you that are watching have all had that conversation with your friends where you ask dumb shit like, how many millions to box Anthony Joshua? I mean, yeah, I'd gladly take brain damage for 92 million. I'd do it for like 20K. And I don't think Netflix are going to be happy with replacing Gervonta Davis with a Nate Diaz rematch, as much as Nate Diaz may love that.
Who do you want to fight next?
Maggots.
Who do I want to fight next? I want to beat the fuck out of Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, either one.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you may think Nate Diaz is being delusional here, but, I mean, I'd take brain damage twice in one night for that kind of money. And as crazy as it seems that Jake Paul's actually going to be boxing Anthony Joshua, it